So now I'm going to add a movie clip. As I explained to you guys before at the beginning, I'll explain it again. The movie clip has its own timeline. So this is what we call the main timeline. Scene 1, this is our main timeline. You see that? You see the timeline right here. Now, for instance, if I double click on this boat, the instance of this boat right here, when I double click it, notice I'm in the boat timeline. Notice the time, there's no keyframes, there's nothing there. I could, if I wanted to, and this would really complicate things, in this graphic timeline, I could add stuff. Remember, this is a graphic. It says boat graphic, right? When I double clicked it, I went into this timeline right here. Now, if I go to scene 1, I'm in the main timeline. So when I say main timeline, it's that scene's timeline. And this is what I want you guys to understand. The buttons have their own timeline. We haven't looked at the buttons timeline. The timeline looks a little different than the buttons. The graphics have their own timeline. But the graphic timeline only plays out to wherever, if you had it animated in here, it would only play, say I went to frame 30, it would animate to frame 30. And if I go back to scene 1, and it'll stop about frame 30, animating. You see? So the movie clips, when you create a movie clip, it plays on itself. It plays in its own timeline. The timeline will look the same, but when you do some animation in its timeline, it'll keep looping it on itself. Even though maybe on the main timeline you don't have it looping. Same thing, going back to the same example, it's on the bike, you want the wheels to spin, right? Well, the frame of the bike would be a graphic symbol, but the wheels would be a movie clip symbol where you would set it to motion, to do rotation, for instance, and it would rotate on there. And then, and all those things would be embedded within each other. It'd be like one piece, but they're different pieces. And then you would move the whole bike, the hair would be flowing, the wheels would be spinning, but it would be moving across the screen. You see? But if we stop it, the only problem is if we were to stop it, the symbols would continue to move. The hair would still flow, the wheels would still continue to spin, even though the bike has stopped. Now, there is a way to control that, and it's through ActionScript. Then you would tell it if the user would hit a button, for instance, then you would tell it, hey, stop the movies, and you could basically tell it to do all that, So there are ways to control that, but they do act like it's like a movie within a movie kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to select the guide boat, the top layer, whichever your top layer is. Select the top layer. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to name it bird. I'm going to put a bird there. I'm going to put a simple bird. Huh? Yeah, I know. You inspired me. But my bird is going to be very, very simple because we're not going to take the time to draw it out and all that. So, okay, so in that bird layer, I'm going to put a bird. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something very simple. I'm just going to do 2 V's, and then I'm going to do frame by frame, like this. So it looks like it's flapping its wing, right? But I'm going to put it on the movie. I'm going to do the animation within a movie clip. Okay, so let me show you how we're going to do that. And then we're going to have it, we're going to have it fly around, okay? And we'll see how we'll do that. Okay, so we're going to select, everybody created that new layer. Okay. All right, so let's go to our line tool. And let's change on the line, once you select the line tool, I'm going to make the stroke white. And then I'm going to also change the stroke size. I'm going to make the stroke, let me see something real quick. Ooh, that's big. Yeah, so change it to the stroke to 15. And you do that by selecting the line tool. We change it to white or whatever color you want. And then in the properties, I'm going to change the stroke. Over here, you can use a slider, or you can just type in 15. Okay. So in my bird layer, I'm just going to draw a simple V. 1, and that's it. Oops, too much. As you see, it is a vector shape, right? Vector shape. You know, if I click and drag, you know, and all that kind of stuff. No bounding box around it or anything like that. So I'm going to select it like I've selected when I drew the boat, just like we select anything else. Now we're going to modify, convert to symbol. And this time, though, I'm going to name it bird. Not this time, but beard, bird. Where it says type, I'm going to select movie clip instead of button or graphic, which we've been selecting. We've been selecting graphics. I want to select movie clip. So now, that's it. I'm going to click OK. So you see on mine, the two white strokes, which is the bird, with a blue bounding box around it. But it's a movie clip now. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate it within its own timeline. Okay, so I'm going to double click. So you got the bird, the instance of the bird on stage, double click. Notice everything else you can't select, which is good. Frame 1 is, we could animate this. We could maybe do some, have it do some weird stuff or whatever, expand or something. But we'll just do frame by frame, which we'll also get to learning how to do frame by frame animation. So here's what we could do. Just watch. Don't do anything. So if I select frame 1, I'll go to frame 2. I'll enter a keyframe, and then I'll, maybe flap it this way, move it that way. I'll go to frame 3, put a keyframe there, and I'll move it here. Okay, you're just watching. You're not doing, right? So notice there's my frame by frame. You see? This is what I wanted to do. Now I'm moving my playhead back and forth. But notice when I test it out. See, watch. I'll stop the movie. I stopped the movie, but the movie clip still keeps moving. You see? The boats all stop, except the bird is still flapping its wing. Okay. Okay, I wanted to show you that. Then we're going to go back and finish this up. We'll go back and do it together. But if I want to delay, in terms of, it's kind of flapping its wing really fast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each keyframe and add another just frame, not another keyframe, but just another frame. So I'm selecting each frame and I'm adding another frame. You see? So now is.
How do you do that?
Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk all about that. I'm going to redo all this. But I just wanted to show you that the idea here is now instead of 3 frames, it's 6 frames long. But each frame was 1 frame, and I made each frame to be 2 frames long. Okay. So now when I test it out, see, it goes much slower. So by the way, in terms of frame by frame animation, when you want to slow things down, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to add frames to that one keyframe. Just frames, not keyframes. All right, so now let's go back and do this together. Okay, so I'm in scene 1. I double click on my bird. So now we're going to do it together. I double click on my bird. We notice, one of the things we should notice right away is this right here. It doesn't look like the graphic symbol, it looks like a little gear. So it should look like a little gear, a blue gear. That tells you you're in that movie clip's timeline, inside the timeline of that movie clip. Okay? All right. Now, I'm in frame 1. I'm going to select frame 2. Just going to click it, frame 2, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. So insert timeline keyframe or hit F6.
Say that again.
Insert timeline keyframe or hit F6. Nothing happened?